Hi everyone, it's Comrade Ferret and I'm talking to you on my laptop for a change. Just using my regular old mic and not actually being all that scripted, so I might stutter and stop and stuff like that, but that's perfectly fine because today we are not talking about politics at all. There's no politics in this video whatsoever, we're purely talking about tech. And you may be able to tell that the tech that we're talking about today is a tiling window manager. Now, if you're not familiar with tiling window managers, basically instead of having windows that kind of float around, you might be familiar with KDE or GNOME, or of course Windows. If you're not a Linux user, welcome. Windows is a floating window manager. You can kind of just move windows around, put them wherever you want. And this is cool and fine. You can maximize windows, minimize windows, stick them in places, but it's not very efficient space-wise, right? You kind of just have windows all over the place, and if you want to get to a new window, you either minimize the window that you're currently on, or you move the window aside, or you kind of stack them on top of each other like this. It's not very effective, or of course Alt Tab if you're hardcore, is Alt Tab through all of your windows. A tiling window manager uses all your space efficiently, and you may not care about this that much if you have a nice big display, but especially if you're on a laptop and you don't like using your mouse a whole lot because touchpads really suck and are terrible on your wrist, then tiling window managers might be a good idea for you. And there's a lot of different kinds of tiling window managers. There's just your regular old manual tiling window manager where you set up a certain layout and it kind of follows that layout depending on when you open your window. There's auto tiling window managers. You might have heard of things like i3, Sway, Hyperland. These are either out of the box auto tiling window managers, or you can manually set them up to be auto tiling window managers. And these, when you open up a new window, it kind of moves windows around on your screen and squishes them aside so that they can make room for the new window. And if you're getting too heavy on windows, you just move to a new workspace in any case. You usually have 4 or 5 different workspaces open depending on what you're doing. You have one for your terminals, one for your text, one for your browser, one for your chats, one for, etc., etc. So this, what I'm introducing to you here, is Niri, and Niri is an auto tiling window manager in a sense, but see, an auto tiling window manager, you have one screen and then you have your workspaces up here, and your workspaces would each be a screen, but this workspace scrolls. This is called a scrolling window manager, so I can just scroll and keep going and keep going and keep going just forever. If I want to open up more, open up another terminal over here, that terminal will open up just to the side, and I can open up another and another, and if I want to, I can squish them. I can start adding them on top of one another. That's perfectly fine. Boop. Whoops. Boop. Right. So it's pretty neat because you can have a workspace that really just goes on forever, and as you can see, I can scroll with my touchpad. It's nice and smooth. So if you're like me and you like kind of this smoothness of Wayland compositors, Hyperland I really enjoyed. For instance, if you like the idea of Hyperland, if you like the look of Hyperland but you don't necessarily want to use Hyperland, and you like the idea of scrolling through your windows like this, then Niri might be for you. You can have more workspaces on top of this, right? I got another workspace up here. I got more workspaces down here. I can just keep on adding them forever as well. So basically I'm moving around in a full and infinite 2D environment with this scrolling window manager. So I want to introduce this to you. I wanted to show it off to you, and I also want to show you how to set it up because it is a pretty new project. I've hung out in the community a little bit. They seem like pretty cool people. So I thought I would support it and show it off and also show you how to set it up. So let's go over here. Let's close some of these terminals that I've opened up. And let's open up a new one. Let's blow that up. Let's make it a little bit bigger so you can see. And one more. Okay. So first of all, actually, I guess first of all, we actually have to get Niri, don't we? So let's actually open up a browser. And let's look at Niri. And sorry, my connection is a bit slow. My laptop is not the best, as you may have noticed if you glanced at my fetch there. Okay, so getting started, Niri is available on pretty much every system out there. If you are on Alpine, Arch, FreeBSD, Manjaro, all of this, they're going to be in your package manager. So it's as easy as just installing it through your package manager like you usually would, whether that's pacman, whether that's whatever the heck FreeBSD uses. I'm sorry, I'm not very good at this. If you are on Debian, I noticed you do have to build from source. It's strange that Debian of all things is the one that isn't supported right out of the box, but installing from source isn't that difficult. So here it is for Ubuntu, here it is for Fedora. Either way, pretty simple. I am using Arch, so I would just go over here and go paru -s Niri, or pacman -s Niri. I use paru. Paru is great. It'll show up for me. Have Niri, obviously, but it's as easy as that. So once we have it set up, you're going to wind up with just a blank screen when you open it up. So we're going to need a few more things. We're going to need Alacrity. Get Alacrity. We'll get Waybar, because we're going to want Waybar eventually. And others I guess are just optional. Alacrity is the main thing that you really want, and Fuzzle, F-U-Z-Z-E-L, because you're not going to be able to open anything without those two things, Alacrity being the default terminal and Fuzzle being your default application launcher. So once you have that, you will wind up with just a blank screen. And I can't show you that because my laptop is kind of horrendous for it, and my desktop has so much weird configurations on it that it would probably just confuse you as soon as I open it up, because everything would just look very strange. So yeah, we're just going to pretend we're going to open up a new... I'm sorry, this is so jank. We're going to open up a new workspace over here, and we're going to pretend that you are now opening up Niri through your login manager, through your display manager. So if it's SDDM or LightDM, when you're logging in, you just go down to the bottom and where it usually says Plasma or whatever. Once you have Niri installed, you'll be able to select that and select Niri, and then you'll log in. You'll get a nice, beautiful, blank gray screen. So in that blank gray screen, we are going to press Windows D, and Windows D is going to bring up Fuzzle. Let's open up Alacrity just to have that real experience. So it's going to look something like this. You might get a warning down here. It's all sorts of reasons. I don't like Alacrity very much. Your fetch might not work up here because it's a PNG. But anyway, you have Alacrity going. So from here, you're going to want to go nano. And I have it already up here for you, but .config Niri config.kdl, and this will bring up your configuration. Everything that you want to configure that is part of Niri itself is going to be in here. So for those of you who might be just used to KDE Plasma, all your configuration files are mostly in the GUI. You don't usually want to be messing with the configuration in the KDE Plasma. Just with text you can, but there's so much that you probably don't want to. Niri, there's not quite so much, and it's actually pretty easy to just go through. So we're going to go through every single line of this config, and I'm going to show you what exactly I configured and why, if you want to mimic my setup. Because it is very pretty, and I like making things pretty. I like ricing. If you like ricing, you're probably, for one thing, going to like Niri, and you might want to follow along just to get some ideas on how to set up Niri and make it not just a blank gray screen. So the first thing I'm going to do actually isn't very ricey, but you're probably going to want to do it anyway, because you're not a monster. And what I mean by that is, who on earth uses the numpad for anything other than numbers? Why isn't numlock on by default on every single system on the planet? If you use numlock for page up, page down, and end and home, I don't want to know you. I don't want to be your friend. So we're going to change that. We're going to make numpad only be a numpad. And the way we do this is by putting this option in here. So I've taken out some of the default options and I've put in numpad:\Mac. That isn't because I like Macintosh computers, it's because I don't like numpad not being for numbers. And on the Mac, the one and only good thing about Mac computers is that the numpad is only a numpad. So we're going to tell the platform, tell Niri to mimic a Mac numpad. The second thing I have in here is my compose key. If you don't know what a compose key is really freaking cool. You can do some really neat stuff with the compose key. So if I, in this case, I've set my compose key to caps lock. When I hit caps lock, it's just going to enter in this little bullet here. But then I have different key combinations, and there's thousands of key combinations to just type anything you want. So it can be important things like E with an acute. It can be I can put C equals and get a euro sign. Like, it's all really straightforward, all very intuitive. I can do this, right? Really important symbols that you need to use all the time. You can just use the compose key. So it's kind of nice to be able to just set the compose key in here. So that's what I've done with caps lock. Touchpad. I did change some touchpad settings myself. I uncommented the acceleration speed and the acceleration profile. The reason being, I don't use my touchpad a whole lot. I'm kind of using it a lot in this video just to, I guess, show you how smooth Niri is. And I don't really use the cursor a whole lot. Usually I'm using keyboard shortcuts, and that's part of the reason that you want to use a tiling window manager, again, is because you don't want to use a touchpad. You want keyboard shortcuts for absolutely everything. Or just using your touchpad as a glorified gesture box, what I call it. So you don't want to be moving your mouse a whole lot because it hurts when you're doing it for a long period of time. If you're doing a whole lot of work on your laptop, you know you probably are wearing a wrist brace right now. So I've changed that acceleration profile and acceleration method to, or sort of acceleration speed, just so that when I do have to use the touchpad, it moves quickly and I don't have to use it for that long. Mouse I'm not using, so I left alone. Workspaces. Okay. So this is how workspaces work in Niri. If you are used to Hyperland, Sway, i3, all of these have workspaces as numbers, and Niri does too, kind of behind the scenes. But if you want workspaces to be understood when you're telling a window to go to a workspace, you need to have that workspace named. So I've made 3 workspaces here, and they do go in order. So if you want Scratchpad, in this case, to be workspace 1, you got to put it first. So I've got Scratchpad up here. I really like Scratchpad in Sway, and I wanted to have something like that in Niri. And in my mind, the Scratchpad is kind of above everything else. It's kind of where I just stick stuff that I'm not using right now. It's sort of like these are my minimized windows, and I can bring them back whenever I want. So I've made that first. Second one is main. This is where I do all of my stuff, and as you saw, it is a scrolling window manager, so I can just scroll forever. I can put everything ever in main, and it's perfectly fine. That's not a problem. And I have my third one as chat. And the reason being is when I'm doing work, I don't want to be distracted by chat. It would suck to, you know, be scrolling and scrolling and scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. Oh, hey, there's my chat. Oh, look, somebody sent me some interesting messages. Somebody sent me a cool image. I'm going to go and have that conversation with somebody while I'm supposed to be doing work. And it's just very distracting. So this way, Niri is fantastic for productivity, because I can do this forever. And if you're like me, you're going to be doing this forever when you're just thinking. You just scroll because it's fun. And you're never going to run across your chats. You actually have to move to the next workspace to get to your chat. So there's that. So those are my 3 workspaces. You can obviously have different ones if you want. But yeah, you can uncomment these you can see how when I've been moving around my mouse and just fidgeting here, the focus does follow the mouse. So if I don't have to alt-tab between these windows, I just move my mouse between them, and it moves with the focus to those windows, and that's what these do. Same with warp focus to mouse. If I create a new window here, it's gonna instantly put my mouse in that window. Gaps. Okay, you may have noticed, yes, there are gaps in between these windows, but they're not very big. They are bigger by default. I don't want them to be big gaps between windows, so I have all my windows maximized. Let's just create a few windows here to give you an idea of what's going on. Okay, gaps. These are usually bigger, the gaps between windows. I've made them smaller because I don't like big gaps. I don't want them to be 0, because that's awful, but I do want smaller gaps. That's all I did. That took way too long just to explain gaps. I'm sorry. So this is useful for you. Now proportions by default are 1/3 if I recall. So when you open up a new window, it's going to take up 1/3 of your screen rather than 1/2 like these two, right? That takes up 50% of the screen, 0.5. And you can add more proportions to go with your hotkey to switch between proportions. So in this case, I have proportions as 0.5 and 0.25. So if I press Windows R, which is the hotkey for this, it switches between these two different sizes. So if you want even smaller windows, or if you want bigger windows sometimes, you can put as many different proportions in there as you want. There is also a hotkey for just resizing your window on a smaller scale. By default, it's mod plus and mod minus to increase or decrease the size of a window. So you can also just do that. But if you just want presets, just make your life a little bit easier, you can set them here. Yeah, here's your default column width. So again, I have my proportion at 0.5. Focus ring, okay. The focus ring we're going to come back to a few times because the focus ring by default is kind of strange. The focus ring is actually a focus box by default. It's just a box that goes behind your screen, a full solid colored box, which I guess is fine if you don't care about things looking nice, but we want to make things look nice. So we're going to change the focus ring width to 2. That's the first thing that we're going to be doing to the focus ring. We will keep coming back to that. Change the color of the focus ring if you want. I left it by default. I like the default Niri colors, so I actually left it. Okay, skipping ahead, we're going to be looking next at the spawn at startup lines. So these are one thing, they're a little bit weirder. If you know what they do, they create new applications when you boot up Niri. So this is your auto start. Unlike other auto starts that you may be familiar with, even if you're familiar with adding them in a config file like this, just manually, you'll notice that everything has quotes around it. Every single token has a quote around it. And this is because Niri doesn't spawn things through a shell. It just spawns them as they are, which is cool. It saves a little bit on resources, but it does mean that you have to quote every single token like this. If you do not, it will fail. So this whole thing does just say Niri message action focus workspace 2. That's what that is, but you have to quote every single one of those tokens. That's all. As I said, focusing workspace 2, that's because workspace 1 is my scratch pad, so I don't want to be focusing on my scratch pad when I start. I want to be focusing on my main workspace, which is workspace 2. The second one is xwayBG, that's my background application. That's how I get my background. So if you want a background, you need this. That's how you get rid of that blocky, gross gray screen that you have right now. Waybar. We will be going more into Waybar in the near future here within this video. Not right at the moment, but this is what you do for Waybar. If you are not using any other window manager that uses Waybar other than Niri, you don't need these two tokens, the -C and the location of the config file that you're using. But I have several different window managers that I use depending on my mood. That do use Waybar, so I have different config files for each of them just depending on their needs. So that's why that's here. But if you don't do that, then just put spawn at startup Waybar and you're good to go. Foot server, this is important for Waybar stuff because Waybar does use foot. So if I click up here and it opens up BTop, that's using the foot server. So if you don't have that, you won't be able to do that. Sway idle, this is my idler. If I leave my screen on for however long, I won't be going into how I configured this in here. I think that's beyond the scope of this video, but if you do use Sway idle, you need to launch it. Mako, very important. This is just your notifier. It just sits there in the background. WL sunset. I like this a lot. You don't have to use it, but especially if you are a vampire like me and using your laptop a lot at night when it's dark out, it reddens the screen as the sun sets, and just configure it to your longitude and your latitude up here. xwayland-satellite. So this is something that I should have talked about earlier, and I apologize. If you are using Niri, you should be aware of things that it does not do very well. One of those things is xwayland. It does not support xwayland right out of the box. Xwayland is complicated. If you don't know what xwayland is, it is basically a compatibility layer that allows you to use X11 applications on your Wayland desktop. Wayland is a rather new thing. We've been using X11 for over 30 years, and Wayland is only just now starting to be widely adapted. So there are some applications that just don't natively support Wayland anymore, or yet rather. So you will need this sometimes. We will be talking about how to use this. xwayland-satellite is a way to get xwayland without actually having it on the same display, if that makes sense. It probably doesn't make sense. It will make sense later, I promise. The console, I like having console when I first start. This is just kind of the stuff that I like to have when I start up my computer. Shielded chat is the other one. It's my chat. What's this? Oh, your pull kit. You need a pull kit. If you don't have a pull kit, whenever you have an application that's prompting you for your credentials, say if you're editing your firewall settings, it's going to ask you for your password before letting you change anything, because that's kind of important. So if I went up here to edit my firewall settings and I didn't have this pull kit, then it would not let me do it. It would just say that authentication failed, and then it would close because it wouldn't have that pull kit. So make sure you have this. For some reason, Niri doesn't have this just launching out of the box, but yeah, if you don't have it, get it, and then make sure it is launching, spawning with Niri. And then the last one, this is for Waybar. And I will explain later what this is, and I will show you this script, and I will give it to you. For now, just put it in there. Okay, this is the next thing. I know I told you we would be coming back to the focus ring a few different times throughout this little tutorial. This is the next thing to do with the focus ring. This is uncommenting, prefer no CSD. And the reason I have done this is because you may have noticed that when I open up a terminal that isn't Alacrity, I have it kind of semi-transparent. It's kind of nice. If I did that without this, prefer no CSD, it wouldn't work, basically. So if you want things to be pretty and translucent, then uncomment this. Screenshot path I left at default. Animations, if you don't like the animations for whatever ungodly reason, you can turn them off there. Window rules. Okay, a lot of what Niri does is through window rules. They're kind of like they are in KDE Plasma, but not really. This is the first window rule that I did, and this is the last thing that you need to do in order to make your focus ring work properly. I changed the geometry corner radius. That's how you get this nice rounded corners, because you may have noticed if you're following along that you do not have rounded corners by default. You have to set them here. You have to do that manually, and then clip to geometry true. So that will just that will set up your nice curved corners, and also set up your focus ring to work with those nice curved corners, so it won't just be a box behind your nice curved corners. And then more window rules here. This is just an example of what you can do. I have shielded chat, my chat program, opening on workspace chat. This is what I was talking about. If you want to have things open automatically on a given workspace, you need to name them. So I've named it chat here, and then open maximize true, so it always opens. Same with Gmusic browser over here. I've done that always on my scratch pad because I don't want my music to be in front of me. I want it to just be kind of hanging out up in space until I need it. Binds. Alright, this is the super important and super fun and super very much customizable to you part. This is stuff that you may completely disagree with me on, and that is perfectly fine. I will show you how to change them on your own. So up here I have some of my favorite programs that I want to spawn on a key press. Mod, in case you're wondering, is your Windows key. So this is Windows plus X, will kill xwayland-satellite and launch xwayland-satellite again. This is because xwayland-satellite does sometimes crash, at least on my crappy laptop. I will note that Niri is very, very stable. It's actually like Sway is very stable too, but I had way more crashes on Sway than I have on Niri, largely because I tend to do this a lot, and I just like do this when I'm fidgeting and doing nothing with my life. Things crash. Niri, I can do this forever and nothing will explode on me. But xwayland-satellite is finicky, especially if you have multiple xwayland applications open. So you may need to do this, or not if your computer is better than mine, which it probably is. So yeah, these are just applications that I like: Dolphin, Fire Dragon, Kate. You may notice I'm a KDE fan. Sorry, not sorry. Okay, so when we are using xwayland-satellite, because we have launched it and it's launching in the background, we can always do this. So this is how we use xwayland-satellite. If you're launching an application through Fuzzle or through the terminal or whatever it is you're doing, and it doesn't launch, it may not be broken. So if I open up a new terminal window here, whoops, let's blow that up, increase the size a bit, and I just type gmusic browser. And this is how you test anything, by the way, in Linux. If something isn't working, open it to the terminal, see what it says. And what it says in this case is that it cannot open display, because it is an X11 program looking for an X11 display and not finding one. It's only finding a Wayland display, and it's been like, I don't know what to do with this. So we do have an X11 display in the form of xwayland-satellite, and it exists on display 1. So it's looking on display 0, which is your default display. We want to tell it to look on display 1. So we're going to set an environment variable, display 1, gmusic browser. And now it's going to work. Except that it's looking for stuff that doesn't exist. But if I look up here, here's gmusic browser in the place that I told it to open up in that window rule, if you remember. So yeah, that's how you do that. Now, if I find this cumbersome, and of course I do, who wants to open things up in the terminal all the time? That is stupid. We want it to work in Fuzzle here. So you may have noticed that I have applications in here called Shielded Chat, for example, xwayland-satellite. I'm going to show you how to add those. So let's first navigate to the folder where all of our application shortcuts are located. And this is good for you to know if you don't already know it. It's kind of a weird place to put it, but it's in user share applications. And if I ls in here, all of my applications are in here. So if we look in here for gmusic browser, it should be in here somewhere. I believe it starts with a G. There we go, right up here. So it is there. So we're going to edit this shortcut. So we need to use sudo because it is outside of our home directory. We're going to need root privileges. Nano gmusic browser.desktop. And this is what a shortcut looks like. And not super intimidating. All we have to do here is change the exec. So right now it's just opening gmusic browser from the path from user/bin, I do believe. So we're going to change that. We're going to give it that environment variable that we gave it before, env display equals :1. Now you can just save it and leave it like this. If you are only ever opening this application in Niri with xwayland-satellite, this is perfectly fine. Just save it that way and you'll have no problems ever in the future. In my case, I use a lot of different window managers, so I am going to actually change it to be called something else. That just makes it easy for me to tell the difference between the two different shortcuts. And this is all you have to do. So let's exit out of that, Control X, save modified buffer, Y, and it's going to ask you a name to write. Again, you can just leave it as is if you want to overwrite the old shortcut. I do not. I want to have two different shortcuts, so I'm going to name it xwayland-gmusicbrowser.desktop. Enter, yes, and then we're good to go. Now, if we open up Fuzzle and look for gmusic browser, we should have both of our shortcuts in there. Let's open up gmusic browser, xwayland-satellite, and just like that, we go up to where it's supposed to open. It should pop up. There we go, and there it is. Easy as that. Okay, back to our config. Remember that thing? This is important. So Niri by default has this line already, these two lines, the audio raise and audio lower. If you have audio keys on your keyboard, important. If you're on a laptop, you probably also have brightness keys on your keyboard, and you'd probably like to use those now and again. It does not have those by default, So you will want to install Light. So this program up here called Light, and you want to add these two lines. Mod Q is your quit by default. Now these are your window navigation buttons, and if you're following along, you may notice that there's a few more that just aren't in there by default because I am a dweeb and I have added WASD to navigate my windows as well. For those times when I have T in one hand and I have only one hand to be navigating my laptop with, it's nice to have that right next to the mod key. And this is how you move around from windows. Mod shift is how you move windows themselves. You will always follow the window that you are moving. So just mod shift in combination with everything else. So you may have also noticed, actually I should be talking about this throughout all of it. This is another thing I changed. So by default this just says focus window down. I have changed that to make it move fully in 2D space. So it says focus window or workspace down. So now if I use mod down, for instance, if there's no window below me, it will actually move to the next workspace. But if there is a window below me, let's open this up, let's move it to be below me, it will move between those windows. So I will be moving fully within 2D space just with this these two buttons rather. So I would strongly recommend changing this from focus window down, focus window up to focus window or workspace down, focus window or workspace up in all cases. Because I think it's cool. If you don't think it's cool, then don't listen to me, that's fine. Moving your columns around. So all this stuff I think is default. Moving columns, focusing workspaces up and down, moving columns to workspaces up and down. I would just definitely give these a read over just to see all of what you can do to navigate your laptop. You know, it's a bit of a learning curve for sure, but if you want to go completely mouseless, this is the way to do it, right? You can navigate absolutely everything, get all over the place within your computer and not even touch the mouse. So here is the last thing I want to show you. This the focused workspace. The workspaces are just numbered here, so you can just move between workspaces. You can move columns between workspaces in this fashion. Here's the keys that you have to switch between your preset column widths that we talked about earlier. Mod F is to maximize your column, so this is what I've been doing a whole lot. But if you want to change the width, over here we have mod plus and mod minus. Here's your print screen, your screenshots. So yes, Niri does have just a built-in screenshotter, as well as a built-in powering off the monitor, which I find quite handy. This just turns your screen black until you press a key or move the mouse. And then the last thing is this hotkey overlay. So you may have noticed when you opened up Niri for the first time that you have a hotkey overlay right in front of you as soon as you boot, which is super handy if you want to know how to navigate your desktop, if you need a reminder. The cool thing, if you are used to Hyperland or Sway, you're used to the hotkey overlay there, it's the default hotkeys all of the time. So if you are a normal human being and you change your hotkeys, it will not respond to it. Niri does actually respond to it. So if I open mine up here, I believe it's mod question mark. There we go. Here's my hotkeys. And this is exactly how I have them set. So it does respond to it. It's really cool. But I don't need this to be spawning all the time at startup by default. I don't always need this. I have it very much in my muscle memory how to navigate my computer by now. So I've just added in these three little lines, it's actually just one line, telling it to skip the hotkey overlay at startup. And that is it for configuring Niri. Hey, one thing I missed in the tutorial for the config file is really important, and I'm really sorry for missing it. Mod plus bracket left and mod plus bracket right. So this is how I've been stacking windows into columns. So if I open up a new window over here and I want to put that in the same column, that's what that's doing. I want to take it out. I use mod bracket right and mod bracket left respectively. And this is a default hotkey. What is not default is the command that it gives you. So this is once again an OR command. I can't remember what this is by default. I think this is consume window left and then expel window right or something like that. So we're going to change it to consume or expel window left and then consume or expel window right, just so that we can very organically move and stack windows into columns and unstack windows from columns, and just kind of move this forever. So I can just do this forever, right? And it just keeps on stacking in each column respectively with this hotkey. So yeah, super fun, super important. Make sure you add it. Very cool, awesome. As soon as you close this and save it, it will just convert everything over for you. You don't need to do a restart. If there's any errors, it will tell you. So let's close Alacrity. We're never going to be using that again because we like console in this house. And let's quickly show you how Waybar works. Nano config. Actually, in my case, I have Niri Waybar as my configuration, if you will remember that. If you are just having the default Waybar config, it will be in config/Waybar/config. But in our case, we do have a separate config for Niri, so we put it here. Oh. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so if you're not aware, this is Waybar up here. Waybar is awesome. It's basically like, you don't need a taskbar in a tiling window manager because you're not maximizing and minimizing windows and moving them around and stuff. All your windows are there on your workspaces. So you can instead have a pseudo taskbar up here that is kind of like a conky. It has your time, it has your system tray up here, it's got all of your system information that's going on up here, and I've got this up here that tracks my workspaces and the focused window name. So I'm going to show you how to set that up. Waybar by default, I believe, does come with all of this stuff, but there's some things that we're going to add specifically for Niri. So you will notice that I don't have a whole lot of modules on the left. In fact, I only have one, which is my custom workspaces. So let's scroll down to that. This is all sway stuff that I should have actually taken out before doing this tutorial, so it's not so cluttered and confusing. Ignore that. Let's only look at custom workspaces right here. So here we have this script. I will be providing this script. You stick it in here in the same place that your Niri configuration is, and we're going to have it execute it with this line. We do need signal 8. We're going to have a max length here just so that it doesn't get super cluttered with extremely long names, such as long names of websites, and that's all we need to do for that. So let's actually have a look at these workspaces, Niri workspace script here. Blow that up so you can see it, because you should know what it's doing before you start using it, because it is kind of resource intensive. Now, as I said, my laptop is kind of garbage, and a lot of this CPU power is just going into recording the screen, but about 8% of it is going into this script, because what the script is doing is about 3 times every second, every 0.3 seconds, it is reading which workspace I am on and what is the name of my focused window. So all of this stuff I did just take wholesale from somebody else. Can't remember their name, but they're awesome, thank you. And this part is added in by me with all of the seds, all of the regex stuff. If you want to, you can change what the icons look like here. So you will need nerd fonts symbols. So if I just open up a window here, Paro nerd font symbol, it should come up. You can install it from that, and that just gives you symbols to use in all of this Waybar stuff. Waybar uses nerd font symbols very heavily. So if you want to change what these look like, these little icons up here, let's just open up a browser quickly here. I'll show you where to do that. Whoops, that's not my browser. Browser. So if I go nerd font cheat sheets, and I can just search for stuff. If I want, I don't know, penguin, I can get a penguin, and I can have penguins up in here instead of just dots, right? Pretty easy, but that's how you can customize any of this stuff in Waybar. So that's that script. Just be aware that it takes up resources and that you can edit it and you're good. Let's go back down to our Waybar config. Modules right. Okay, before we get to modules right, this script is also the reason that we launched that other script that we spawned at startup. What was it called? execandsignal, I think, execandsignal.sh, because that is sending that signal every 0.3 seconds, telling this script to do itself over again. So yeah, that's the reason it's kind of resource intensive. If you don't care about this at all, you can just not have it. That's fine. I like to know what window is called. I like to know what workspace I'm on. Sorry, this is just an old script. I know this is confusing, but it's not actually in use. I should have cleaned this up before doing my tutorial. I apologize. Pretend that, this isn't here. Configuration with modules right. These are all, I believe, default in Waybar. You can put them wherever you want to put them. This is actually the order. You will notice I have my weather, and then I have my network, and then I have my temperature, etc., etc. So if you don't want some of them, you can remove them. If you want more of them that aren't in here, you can stick them in. Waybar's manual is super handy on this. I think the one thing that is not in there by default is the weather. Let me just look for weather here. Weather. Oh my god, my spell. Weather. There we go. Okay. This is just a curl, and if you're unfamiliar with curl, it's a default Linux command that basically just downloads something off of the internet and either puts it in front of you in the terminal or it downloads it to a file. In our case, it is basically just sticking it in a terminal, but the terminal is Waybar. So all I've done is I've entered in my city in here, change the city to whatever it is where you live. Same with down in here. Yeah, that's it. Sorry, let me just blow this up so you can actually see the entire script. I know it's a little bit long, but if I go to this site, you'll kind of see how it works. And there we go. We got the weather. That's all it is. So it looks very familiar, right? So all it's doing is it's pulling the site and sticking it up there for you. So yeah, that is Waybar. And I know that's not the best tutorial for Waybar ever. I do recommend just reading up on it, maybe seeing what other configurations people have done. Maybe you'll get some fun ideas. I mainly wanted to show you that script that's very specific to Niri to get this stuff. So that's, I think, all I have for you. There's not a whole lot else to show you. I kind of gave you a little rundown of what Niri looks like, what its limitations are. One, if you are super heavy on X11 applications, still you don't want to be using Niri, I don't think, at least not yet. Because it is a fairly new project and doesn't support X11 natively. And the other thing is, if you are using NVIDIA, possibly, I'm using NVIDIA and it works fine, but I have heard some people say that NVIDIA doesn't work so hot with it. Maybe if you're using like an older driver, if you're not using anything newer than like driver 545, it might give you some issues. I'm not sure, but just be aware that, like with anything, especially older NVIDIA drivers are kind of garbage on Linux. And that's all. This video is probably already super long, so I'm not going to extend it a whole lot. Thank you for watching. I hope you give Niri a shot. Support the developers. They seem like really cool people. And let me know how it goes. As always, leave comments, leave questions in your comments. I do read all of them. I delete the ones that are horrible, and I answer the ones that are not, especially the ones who are looking for help. I love giving tech support, so yeah. Take care.